Hello all. It's been a while, and I admit I'm a little behind the 8 ball with this. However, what we're going to do today is a review I've been meaning to do for a couple of years. Halloween is a special time. The pagan ancient traditions hanging heavy around the holiday, a grim and ghoulish atmosphere of dread permeating the very air. And so, it seems appropriate that we review the most grim and desolate of bands. I am speaking, of course, of the one, the only, the Beach Boys. Now, before we get into it, I will say that like most early 60s pop groups, the Beach Boys' early albums are extremely patchy. They seem to have struggled to an even greater degree than most of their contemporaries with making an album consistently good. And so, as a result, Beach Boys albums aren't really fully listenable the whole way through until about 1965. But that doesn't mean there aren't a couple albums that are worth listening to from their earlier phase. And we're going to talk about one of them today. More specifically, 1964's All Summer Long. The album opens up with I Get Around, which is a Beach Boys classic. You're sure to have heard this song several 100,000 times if you're even moderately familiar with this band. I know for sure that it was one of the first Beach Boys songs I ever heard, back in the passenger seat of my buddy's Jeep in junior year of high school. I well remember those days. The jokes, the camaraderie, the blood on the windshield from the pedestrians that we'd struck. Good times. The title track is one of the more beautiful songs the Beach Boys wrote during the early phase of their career and relates to many themes that any sufficiently privileged middle-class white teenager could relate to, like waiting outside your girlfriend's house to pick her up, going to the beach, trying to escape the disintegration of the traditional family unit created by two people who should never have been together in the first place, descending into a cycle of unhealthy behavior and abusive relationships. We all know the circumstances. Hushabye is the one cover on this entire album, and the Beach Boys didn't do a huge number of covers, which is interesting relative to a lot of other early 60s bands, and I've always thought that maybe they would have benefited from doing more covers, but in any case, this one is absolutely fantastic. Little Honda is just great fun. A cute little song about going down to buy a little motorbike. I will say I'm pretty sure this is a rip-off of some older Beach Boys song, but I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here, and that when the Beach Boys rip themselves off, usually the rip-off is better than the original. This is one song that I have no ghoulish commentary to add on here, no black comedy about life and various things. This is just an adorable song, and I've always loved it. You know, it's probably just me being sappy, but I have always loved this song. Even if nowadays it does kind of bring me back to a place and time that I don't want to go back to, I still love it nonetheless. Carl's Big Chance is a nice little instrumental. I really like the progression here, and wait a minute. This is Can I Get a Witness by Marvin Gaye. Wendy is perhaps the best song on this entire album, providing a fantastic prelude of what was to come in terms of overall sound in 1965 and 1966, particularly in the intro. Lyrically, it's just another breakup song, but the music is good enough to justify that. Normally for me, alluding to other songs in your song is generally kind of a no-no, especially when your song maybe isn't that good. You know, don't make me think of somebody better in your song, because I'll turn you off and listen to something else. And I could very easily imagine somebody in the 60s thinking that exactly, but I'm okay with this track. It's fun and mercifully short. Girls on the Beach is pretty good, if only because it is a blatant rewrite of Surfer Girl off of the album of the same name. Little surfer, little world, made my heart come all undone. On the beach you'll find them there, in the sun and salty air. And what I said earlier about Beach Boys rewrites isn't really true here, but honestly, the way these early Beach Boys albums are, I'm not going to complain here, I'm just going to let it slide. At the Drive-In is fun and kind of goofy. It's a song about exactly what it sounds like. But on the other hand, this is about where Mike Love's vocals start getting really annoying.
When you hear the countdown,
this track is entry number 2 in this bizarre little tradition the Beach Boys had in 1964-65 of doing these little comedy skits on their albums. This is especially strange because not one of these skits is funny at all. And in fact, I'm not entirely sure of why the Beach Boys even did this. Where did they get this idea? Was this a common thing in the 60s? The only thing I can think of that's even remotely close to this is the whole skit tradition in rap. And I don't particularly like the skit tradition in rap either. I don't think very many rappers do it well. But most importantly, this album isn't even 30 minutes long, and yet we have a blatant filler track here. Don't Back Down is pretty good. Definitely one of the most memorable early Beach Boys songs, even if certain melodic progressions in the chorus do remind me a little too much of a song by the Beatles. Which, I might add, was a cover in and of itself. So, I'm not entirely sure who the Beach Boys would be ripping off there, or even if this is a rip-off, you know? There are only so many chord progressions one can use, and it's inevitable that there's going to be some repetition. This album is pretty good. None of these early Beach Boys albums have dated all that well as a unit, at least none of them before today. But this one is probably the best of the bunch. This and Surfer Girl. Those are the two that hold up the best. The others are pretty iffy. And speaking of iffy, I have some important news, because the next holiday special will also be a Beach Boys album. Because, as it turned out, the record company in 1964 thought that a Beach Boys Christmas album was a good thing.